My name is Samantha Hayes. I am 27 years old. If someone asked me to describe my life, I wouldn't hand them a neat summary or a list of achievements. I would give them a song instead. A slow, aching jazz ballad filled with shadows, sudden sparks of light, and quiet notes that feel like secrets meant only for me. I live in Portland, Oregon, where the rain seems to fall almost every day, and the air always carries the scent of roasted coffee beans and damp pine. My world is small. A one-room apartment sits above a dusty old bookstore. A guitar leans against the wall like a silent companion, and sheets of music are scattered across my kitchen table as if they've been caught in a storm of unfinished dreams. In my family, they call me the dreamer. They mean it kindly on the surface, but there is always an edge beneath the word. My sister Victoria is a lawyer in Seattle, sharp-minded and unstoppable. My younger brother Ethan writes code somewhere in Silicon Valley, building digital worlds out of logic and ambition. My parents glow with pride whenever they speak about them. And me? I write songs no one in my family ever listens to, except two people who always did. My grandmother and grandfather. I grew up in the rainier part of Portland in a modest two-story house with peeling blue paint and a porch that creaked like it was whispering warnings if you stepped on the wrong board. The backyard was wild with blackberry vines that scratched your skin if you dared to push too far in. On warm summer evenings, I would sit beneath an old cedar tree and listen as the sound of my grandfather's trumpet drifted out through the open window like a memory trying to escape. Grandpa Thomas was never famous. In the 70s he played in smoky jazz bars in Chicago, places thick with laughter and regret, before eventually settling down in Oregon with my grandmother Margaret, a retired nurse who still smelled faintly of lavender soap no matter what she was doing. They weren't flashy people. They didn't need to be. There was something quietly magical about them. The kind of presence that made you feel safe without a single word. Grandpa's hands were rough from years of gripping his trumpet. But whenever he played, the air seemed to grow warmer, even in the dead of winter. I was 8 years old when I wrote my first melody. It wasn't much. Just a handful of clumsy notes scribbled on the back of a math worksheet. But he treated it like I had just composed a masterpiece. Music isn't just what you hear, he told me once, his eyes bright. It's what you carry inside. If you keep it close, it will always lead you home. My parents never understood that. My father ran a lumber supply company. My mother taught chemistry at the local high school. To them, success lived in spreadsheets, diplomas, and predictable outcomes, not in fragile songs no one had asked for. At the dinner table, conversations felt like competitions I was destined to lose. Victoria would talk about mock trials and scholarship offers. Ethan would describe robotics projects and complicated algorithms. My parents' faces would light up with pride, nodding at every accomplishment. Then they would turn to me. I would say I was working on a new song inspired by rain sliding down my bedroom window. The silence that followed was always deafening. Sometimes my father would clear his throat and say, "That's nice, Sam. But what about your grades?" Other times my mother would press her lips together as if she were holding back the question she truly wanted to ask. When are you going to get serious? They loved me. I know they did. They just believed music was a phase I would eventually outgrow, like messy handwriting or teenage rebellion. My grandparents saw me differently. They let me stay over on weekends. Grandpa would pull out his old vinyl records, Miles Davis, Chet Baker, Ella Fitzgerald, and we would sit in the dim living room while the turntable crackled like a tiny fire. He taught me how to listen for the spaces between notes, how silence could speak louder than sound. Looking back, those nights were my real education. Not in theory or scales, but in permission. Permission to dream in a family that worshipped straight lines and safe choices. By the time I turned 18, the pressure at home felt like a constant electrical hum you couldn't turn off. College brochures began piling up on the kitchen counter. Engineering programs, business schools, even a pre-law packet Victoria mailed me just in case. I would smile politely, take them to my room, and shove them into the back of a drawer. What no one knew was that I had already decided. The idea of sitting in lecture halls memorizing formulas I didn't care about felt like locking my heart inside a box and throwing away the key. Music wasn't just something I loved. It was the only thing that made sense to me. I wrote songs late into the night until my fingers ached. Sometimes I woke up with new melodies still echoing in my head, as if they had been waiting patiently for me inside my dreams. The moment everything changed came one Sunday morning over pancakes and burnt coffee. Victoria was visiting from Seattle, glowing with stories about a case her firm had just won. Ethan scrolled through his laptop, likely building something brilliant without even trying. I took a deep breath and said the words that had been building in my chest for years. I'm not going to college. The room went completely still. I'm going to focus on my music. I'll get a part-time job. I'll pay my own rent. My voice trembled, but I didn't look away. My mother blinked in disbelief. My father's mug hit the table harder than necessary. Victoria crossed her arms like she was preparing for a courtroom argument. They spoke over one another, warnings, disappointment, fear disguised as logic. Finally, my father said the words that drew a line through my life. If you choose this, you can't stay here. 2 weeks later, I left with my guitar, a duffel bag, and $380 saved from babysitting and a summer job at the farmer's market. I rented a tiny studio above a bookstore downtown. The heater rattled like it had a cough that would never heal. My only view was a brick wall. But it was mine. During the day I waited tables at a cafe. At night I wrote music until my hands cramped. There was no applause. No promises. Just me and the songs. And for the first time, I felt free. The first years blurred into exhaustion and instant noodles. Rent swallowed nearly everything I earned. What remained went to guitar strings, cheap recording equipment, and groceries that rarely included anything fresh. After late shifts, I climbed narrow stairs to my apartment, sat cross-legged on the floor, and played beneath the flicker of a lonely street lamp. Most of the demos I recorded stayed hidden on my old laptop. I kept telling myself the next one would be better. My mother called often. My father called rarely. Even Ethan texted once to say I was smart enough to do something else. Only my grandparents never tried to steer me away. Then one freezing January night, my phone rang. My grandmother's voice was shaking. Grandpa had suffered a heart attack. He didn't survive. At his funeral, my hands trembled so badly I almost dropped the guitar pick. That night, back in my apartment, I wrote a song without stopping, pouring every memory of him into the melody. I called it Trumpet in the Rain and posted a rough recording online without expecting anything. A week later, my inbox exploded. Musicians wanted to collaborate. An indie singer from Seattle asked to record it. When her version went live, strangers began singing my words back to me. Opportunities snowballed. Small record labels reached out. I wrote tracks through sleepless nights and watched them quietly gather hundreds of thousands of streams. No one asked for Samantha Hayes. They asked for Rain Miller, the pseudonym I chose in a quiet tribute to my grandfather. Years passed. Royalties grew. My bank account crossed into numbers I had never imagined. Still, I kept my apartment modest. Still above the bookstore. I wanted my family to believe I was barely getting by. Only my grandmother knew the truth. When she was diagnosed with early Alzheimer's, I made a promise. I would give her music, light, and dignity. I bought a sprawling old estate outside the city and renovated every corner for her safety and comfort. I even purchased a helicopter so I could fly her over the Columbia River Gorge, hoping the beauty might awaken fragments of memory. I kept everything secret, until the day my mother called and demanded a family meeting. They had already decided to put Grandma in a nursing home. They spoke about costs, schedules, inconvenience, as if she were not sitting right there in the room. When I said I would take care of her myself, they laughed. "You can barely take care of yourself," my father said. Something inside me went very still. That was the moment I realized success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about deciding who you are willing to become when they never believed in you at all. I stood up, took my grandmother's hand, and finally told them the truth. Not as a song, not as a dream, but as a life I had built note by note, in the rain, in the dark, and in the silence where no one had been listening until the world did.